Welcome, everyone. It's so beautiful to see long known, familiar faces. And I'm actually holding both of my books in my lap to say thank you to everyone who was so incredibly supportive of Rocksteady. And it's traveled so far and it's touched the hearts of so many people. And many of you have been part of that. And now here we are celebrating the sister of Rocksteady, Sensing Ground. It's surreal. Gretchen, welcome. Gretchen's a psychiatrist based in the US, in Hawaii, I believe. Is that right?
Yes.
And Gretchen and I definitely speak the same language, and I think we hold humanity and health and the medical orientation and diagnostic pathology paradigm in a similar soft container. So, the reason I invited Gretchen here today is because I thought it could be really useful to gather together. I've got a candle going to be with what is in the world at the moment. And so I said to Gretchen, why don't we talk about overwhelm, overload, instability, and the personal and the political, right? So the inside and the outside. And this is what Gretchen and I are seeing in our clinical work, the challenges, the realities, and the optics. So I think part of what Sensing Ground invites us to all do is to slow down, to trust what we feel, to honor our physiology as a primary reality, and to pull ourselves back into that grounded knowing when we find ourselves being drawn out into the optics, the lies, the illusions, the shoulda, coulda, woulda, and continuously holding on to that invisible thread of our own consciousness and awareness to come back into the body and trust. Why is that neural map firing? And becoming curious because there's so much wisdom in the human body. And correct me if I'm wrong, Gretchen, I'm going to throw it over to you in a moment. But I think what Gretchen and I both do, what we share in common, is we're inviting our community of fellow humans, whether they're our clients or not, to trust what they're sensing and feeling and to stay there a bit longer to develop that pattern recognition skill to say, I feel this when I stand in this room, and this is what I'm going to do about it. And that's power. Okay, when we're sick and visiting clinicians because we feel broken, we stand in that room, we feel the symptoms, we feel the emotions, we have the fast thoughts, and we think, I've got no idea what to do about this. I'm going to ask an external expert. So, Gretchen, I would love to hear a little bit from you, maybe, just so people can warm to you and get to know you first.
Yes.
Where are you as a human in this conversation? You've got the medical background, and yet you've also got this deep heart and sense of humanity. How did you come to be where you are?
Well, the first thing that came to mind is I'm just like everyone else trying to figure it out, trying
Yeah.
to trying to handle, day to day, trying to feel good at my work and my interaction and taking care of people and also be present with my family as a mom and a wife and be here with myself and enjoy all the things and handle all the stress because there are a lot in different severities. I am a psychiatrist, and I think maybe it'll be helpful to share how I got connected to Joey. It was a very it's very serendipitous, and I was actually in my ENT office getting a hearing test because I developed a ringing in my ear like a couple of years ago now, and my doctor was saying, I there isn't anything, that we can do except for two things. There's this device and then there's this book. And he said, as a psychiatrist, so I'm a medical doctor, focused on mental health. As a psychiatrist, my ENT said, I think you'll really enjoy this book because she talks a lot about mindfulness and this is what you do. He knew that I'm a type of psychiatrist who does a lot of psychotherapy work with patients. I am not just prescribing medications. It's usually not my first thing to go to anyway. And so that's how I got to know the book, Rocksteady, and then getting Joey's emails. And there was one email that spoke to me, and she talked about suicide in that email. And so it just touched me at that time in a particular way that I just replied to her email and just thanked her really for it, just being brave in talking about this and sharing this with people. And that's how I got connected. And we realized that in both of our expertise, there's so much alignment as far as how important it is to be as individuals in touch with what's going on internally and how we're interacting with our external environment and how my my style of doing clinical work and also in just managing my own mental health like as an individual personally is is looking at what's going on in the body and
Mm.
then what's going on in my thoughts because we know that everything is connected and everything is interacting and how all of that, how my nervous system is interacting with my external world. And that's the news, the politics, all the beautiful stuff that's also happening outside, you know. And yeah, all of that. And so I'm just very grateful that we're able to bridge the different perspectives and come to this space and help each other out, share insights. So I'm so yeah, thankful for being here and being invited to be, gosh, like part of this sister book. I got my copy today, so I'm so
Oh, yay. Thank you so much.
oh yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah, I thought at some point, and I don't know if now is the right time, there is a section, and true to form, because I rarely plan anything, I haven't dog-eared the page, but in the introduction, I talk through the 6 or 7 main steps and processes that Sensing Ground will walk you through as a reader. And then if you choose to join the Sensing Ground community, the online modules support you to deepen that practice. And this is a mature practice. This is a practice for people who are willing to put the apps down and to be with themselves. And the reason that's important is I'm a certified and trained Iyengar yoga teacher. So I've done literally thousands and thousands of hours of body work. And it's a very hierarchical system, and it's very much you listen to the teacher. So what the expert says out there, you do. You rotate that muscle, you spread those fingers, right? So I kind of outgrew that around my age of 30, where I thought my internal wisdom is being thoroughly walked all over by quote unquote senior teachers and experts. And so there was a part of my physiology that went, I'm okay with that as a maiden and as a child because I'm learning how to use my body and how to be in my body. That's appropriate for my stage of life. But I'm now a 30-year-old woman and I want to breathe in my dog pose or my tree pose or my triangle pose, Trikonasana, Vrikshasana, Ardha Mukha Virasana, all of that. I want my body to express itself in its own unique way from the wisdom of my maturity. So I was aware of that maturational stage, which is true for all humans, by the way. I am not extraordinary or unusual, I'm deeply ordinary. Something in my biology said, I don't want the outside expert to tell me anymore. So I'd maxed out on my ability to tolerate being told. I wanted to feel what I feel and notice what I notice with open attention. So I'm not striving for a goal. I'm not pushing for perfection. I'm noticing what I notice in real time and I'm responding lovingly to the situation and experience that I find myself in. So in real time, I'm paying attention to myself and I'm occupying the adult role. I'm the one guiding myself. So when I flip that around, right, and I'm guiding people through body scans, and I'm saying, okay, pay attention to your hip, pay attention to the alignment of your shoulders and your hips, pay attention to the position of your head. Now notice your breath. What happens is I'm the external expert, and I'm telling people where to place their attention. And that is a type of babysitting. Okay? And there are times when that is deeply appropriate and deeply nourishing, but all humans have to outgrow that stage to become the adult for themselves that can sit in silence and say, this is interesting. I can feel my left shoulder blade talking to me. Not because Joey said, pay attention to your left shoulder blade, but because we're sitting in the silence and we're noticing, there's a pulse coming from my left shoulder blade. I'm going to notice that. I'm going to stay a bit longer and just pay some loving attention toward that ache. I'm going to notice my sacrum. Not because Joey told me to, but because my sacrum is starting to fizzle. My sacrum is starting to be dull. My sacrum is starting to feel rusty. I'm going to pay loving attention. And intuitively, right, if we spend enough time intuitively, we may begin to notice my sacrum wants to move. I find myself just wanting to rock my pelvis. For no reason, it just kind of feels lubricating. So we start to get this pattern recognition and this internal authority that Joey's not telling me to rock my sacrum or move my pelvis. My pelvis is asking me to move. My pelvis feels rusty and stuck. Now, this is where sensing ground comes in. What I've noticed in my professional practice, and Gretchen, I'm certain you will have noticed this also, is I try and keep things as simple as possible. So I'm going to preface this by saying I am simplifying the beautiful complexity of being human. And what I'm going to do is to say we have two main types of attention. So as someone sits in their own silence, in their own non-interference, non-disturbance, right? There's no app, there's no teacher. When they sit in themselves and the body speaks to them, they arrive at a choice point. They can judge what they feel. Oh my God, my sacrum hurts. I really should book an appointment. Why is it doing that? Why is it doing that? How can I fix it? This is a problem. This is uncomfortable. I don't want this. Oh, my sacrum, it always plays up. So yes, you're paying attention to your body, but the quality of attention is critical, judgmental, abnormalizing, pathologizing, diagnostic, and it very quickly pivots into, I've got to ask Joey. I've got to book in with Gretchen. I've got to see my osteopath. I've got to book an appointment, right? So we quickly pivot from being in with ourselves to being out to the external savior. And this is culturally very common, and I think from my point of view, culturally we're stuck in this never-ending adolescence, where instead of turning inwards to the adulthood that is our birthright, we're turning out to the experts. We're clicking on an app to tell us how to breathe. We're going outside of ourselves for answers that can only come from attuning inwardly. So no one's done anything wrong. We've kind of all been sold this lie, in a sense, collectively, to study more, to read more, to ask more questions, to defer to the experts, rather than to pause and stay with your sacrum and ask your sacrum, what are you teaching me? So the second type of attention, the first type I call judgmental attention, in a simplistic form. It's coming through duality, right and wrong, good, bad, abnormal, normal. The second type of attention is loving attention. That's what I call it. And this is where there is no good or bad. There is no normal or abnormal. There is no diagnosis, pathology, or expert. There just is. We're noticing with open attention. So as the sacrum feels rusty and dull, we say, oh, that's curious. Hi, sacrum. Tell me more. And we stay listening and we stay noticing and we're like, think I'm just going to move. I'm going to sway my hips a bit. I'm going to do a figure eight. I'm just going to see how that feels. And then you tune in. How does that feel, sacrum? How does that feel for you? And then in that noticing, you might notice images come up. Maybe a memory of when you're 4 years old. Maybe a voice in your head starts saying, you're not good enough. Try harder. And this is where Sensing Ground gives you the toolkit to stay present, to listen, to notice when you're jumping into judgment and looking for the external fix or the external expert, and to notice when you're actually in the arena. Truth is staring you in the face. Memories, worries, concerns, doubts are coming up, and they come up when you connect to the body. So that sacrum is arguably holding memories in its fascia, in its connective tissue, in its muscles, in its tendons. I don't think scientifically we really understand this. But as you continue this practice phenomenologically, which means you live it, you experience it, you might notice every time I go to my shoulder blades, I think about my dad. You will notice these patterns, that something's lodged in the body and has sort of not yet metabolized. So what do? Sensing Ground invites you to empty the thoughts, doubts, and worries that are plaguing you and that are continually repeating and coming up. So when we can sustain the presence and the loving attention, what I call the clutter, and Gretchen might have different language for this, what I call the clutter, it has time to be lovingly attended to and digested, metabolized. So it's like eating a meal, digesting it through the digestive tract, and excreting it out in the toilet. We're learning to do that with our life experience. And we can only do that digestive process if we stay present with body sensation and conscious awareness with this particular type of attention. Loving attention, not judgmental attention. So that is the beginning of Sensing Ground. What I've just described there, I think, is the first 2 chapters. But I want to hand it over to you, Gretchen. I might just close my blind just because the light's a bit bright for me. What comes up for you, Gretchen, in any of that, personally, professionally?
Yeah, so in my where I stand, information is very, very helpful. So, for example, if an individual is coming to me and saying that I'm feeling sleepy all the time or I'm tired all the time,
Yeah.
a lot of a lot of our work actually is clarifying those sensations and experiences that comes from the self-awareness practice that you've mentioned. So the more one is able to tune in to their system and ask those questions, then in in like a clinical setting, for example, like then we can help organize, with each other. And I think there's because it's so humbling to realize just in this space how complex the body system is and just life in general is because there are situations where attention in your body is it's your body holds all of this memory from past experiences or present stuff, right? Your body is so smart
Yeah.
to 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 hold on to these signals and then remind you later when attention is needed. But sometimes, especially because maybe the world is so noisy or our schedule is so busy, we are misinterpreting a lot of these things. And so the
Yes.
the mindfulness practice and tuning in is so helpful so that perhaps it might cue us to thinking, oh, this is something that I can sort through on my own, and also to know if I've really tried and there is now it's time to seek support. Yeah. But even in seeking support, actually, I'm just going to talk, everyone practices differently, but in how I do things, the main goal actually is to reawaken the agency. It's
Yes.
still bringing the power back to the person and learning how to tune back in again so that the goal is not to be in treatment forever. I want people to be in their lives and like do all of these that kind of get back home to their own power and their own strengths that may have been shaken by whatever stress is causing them to feel. So that awareness is whether a medical or psychiatric or other professional help or not is needed. The awareness is a foundation for for us to know what to do.
And this, I think, is, thank you so much. This is where I think it becomes deeply bloody confusing because there's so much out there and things can feel so destabilizing and so overwhelming. You know, just look at the political state of the world right now, and we are all interconnected. And when our brothers and sisters over in different countries are suffering, we are suffering. We are all interconnected. There is a weight we are collectively holding, and that impacts our body, our physiology, and our nervous system. And I would say probably it's even more consciously heavy for high sensitive people who can't tune it out. So the amount we can hold ourselves on our own and regulate ourselves is dependent on how much resource we have and how much capacity we have. And we are relational beings. And so what I want to bring forward to the conversation, and it's a tricky one, but there is a huge difference between saying, I mean, for example, my sacrum feels rusty and stuck and I want Gretchen to fix me, right? That's the just get rid of it paradigm. I don't want to feel it. You take care of it. That, I would say, comes from that judgmental attention and the external expert mode of being. And so it's a worldview. And what Sensing Ground invites you to, and Rocksteady as well, is I might say, I'm stuck with my sacrum. It's rusty. It doesn't really matter what I try or what I do. It's just continuously, persistently stuck. So when I book in to see Gretchen, I'm saying, Gretchen, can you help me connect to my sacrum? I know you can't fix it or remove it, right? And that's often where we have to start with our persistent symptoms. It's not that an expert can go in and get their tweezers and magically move the sensations and poof, like a miracle. It's just better. But there's a relational piece that when I'm in the presence of Gretchen, my nervous system might co-regulate. My nervous system might feel stronger just by simply being in a conversation with her. And as I'm in conversation with Gretchen, if Gretchen can come to the relationship with her loving attention, now my sacrum has not only my loving attention, but it has the power of her loving attention as well. So you're getting two human beings placing this specific type of attention on your body. And that is resourcing, and that is regulating, and that is co-regulation. And that's how Gretchen's nervous system can help support my nervous system to get some, hopefully more mobility and to get a shift. And it's relational work. So the key being what Gretchen said about returning the power back to the client. It's about honoring that there are places in our own relationship to self where we're stuck and we're blocked. And we can't go any further on our own. And sometimes it's having those spontaneous or magical little conversations with people, these little micro relationships where something just shifts and something opens up. And this is part of our relationality. And what I talk about continuously almost in Sensing Ground is if you are not connected to yourself, so if you don't actually know what you feel and you're not spending time to tune in and be with yourself, it's very hard for you to express yourself or fully be with others, which means they're not actually seeing you, they're not knowing you, they're not hearing from you. You're just like a piece of furniture in the room. You're occupying space and you're physically there, but they're not touching your inner world or your inner experience. And so that can become a very isolating way of being in the world because you move from room to room and conversation to conversation, but you never really feel touched or met or seen or heard or understood or digested or received. And so this is the relational piece. And my observation in our world today is that the modern world is, as Gretchen said, just really busy. We're in the car moving from one appointment to the next soccer game to basketball to violin, right, to all these things. But can the body actually keep up? Can the body metabolize and digest life if we're living at that pace? Because true relationality is a slower ball game where I'm going in to feel what I feel, which takes time. I've got to receive that information. And then if I'm brave, I reveal that. It's like a gift. And it's never been shared before. It's not scripted. It's not predictable. It's like, here's my spontaneous me. And then we have to see if that person has time to receive it and feel it and digest it. And then maybe if they're brave, to give something back. So you get this circulation of aliveness where it's real, human, intimate relationality. My theory is that this is how we used to communicate way back when. You know, and I'm thinking, Gretchen, back to those times when we would have been hand washing at the river, and there's just hours passing where you're picking weeds or you're collecting berries and you're alongside your peers and your community members, and there's a lot of time to just let your thoughts be, to let your body process and digest, and to share from a truer place. Because there's a lot of that proximity and slow shared togetherness. It's a fundamentally different way of being human together. And there's ritual and there's regularity. Whereas in the modern day world, it's a lot of very quick dipping in and out. You're in and out of cars. You barely get beyond the hi, how you doing? Okay, bye. And then I notice when I drop my kids up, my oldest off at school, what could have been times for parents to mingle and wait at the gate and pick up kids, now a lot of people are on their phones. So that sort of incidental, quote unquote, dead time where you're hanging out and waiting, a lot of people are distracted by the technology. And that's having impacts on our physiology as well, which is sort of a whole other conversation. But instead of getting those deeper, intimate, relational moments that help us make sense of ourselves, help us to feel seen, heard, and known, and help our physiology to actually rest and say, I belong here. I belong because I can share of myself and the world doesn't fall apart and the sky doesn't cave in. I can be myself. I can take the mask off. I can be. A lot of our modern day world is not set up for that. And so how do we reclaim that intimacy to have more of those relational touch points so we're not in therapy and doing it behind closed private walls because we're holding it together. The sacrum can't let go. All the muscles and pelvis are just holding it in. Hi, yep, how you doing? Yep, good. Holding it in, holding it in, holding it in, holding it in until you get to a therapy room and you're like, I don't know why my sacrum's so tight. So how do we come back to this natural ancestral way of relating? Intimacy, depth, connection to self first, connection to others. And that's that circulation of our humanity. Gretchen, I'd love to hear what's alive for you in our modern times and what do you feel could have been the case for us 4,000 years ago?
The quiet moments actually is what's really standing out to me that's not happening as much now. I meet so many people clinically and also just like personally who are, let's say, they're moving on to retirement. Yeah. And right now, there's so much focus on being busy and productivity and showing people that, we're valuable at our workplaces because look, I have so much on my plate kind of stuff. I'm doing overtime. And then you transition and you retire and now you're not at work, you know, and it becomes unsettling to even like you mentioned in Rocksteady how you have sounds and processes happening inside your body, like the pulsation, all of that stuff. If you listen closely, you can hear the blood flowing in your ear, right? And many people who are not used to the quiet and busy don't know how to be in those sensations and in their sounds. And so the point is, I think I think we need to reclaim those quiet moments. And
Mm,
it may sound so simple, but this is something that so many people resist. Is this idea that is this idea that you have to incorporate breaks in your work day and even you're not working, just in your day in general. And so many people don't have even just 5 minutes or 10 minutes to sit still
yeah,
or to not be and not be on your phone or not be on the computer or
yeah,
not be interrupted. So I think in my work, that is as simple as it sounds, it's one of the hardest things that hardest homework that I give people is, and for us to just figure out how can we have some of those moments because we need to see one, the getting connected back to ourselves. Like how do we perceive ourselves? Because how that is, there's a way that we see ourselves and we may not be, because we're so busy, we're not conscious about the blueprint that's inside, yet it's showing up in all parts of our lives, and
yeah,
ripples on to like the stressors and everything. But if we get back to like how do I regard myself? How do I think? What's the clutter or the chatter? Like, how do I talk to myself? How would I think? How do I think about myself? Because when we're clear about that, then we're more aware about how we connect and how we want to, and also how we disconnect from external stuff, including people that we don't want in our lives anymore, for example, right? So that self-awareness is just so important, and we need to make time to get back to that.
yeah, yeah. And even that, the big key word here is agency. And that I was actually in talking about like relativity, which is Einstein stuff. But I think if you think about sitting on a train and looking out the window and just like everything's passing by, right? But then if you're sitting on the same train and looking at your own hands or holding your own heart or being present with yourself, like time slows. And that I think is actually very true that if you're living your life based on everything out there and what they're doing and how they're looking and what, where they're going and what they're so, which is the gossiping and the goose chase searching and the wanting the answers and the researching. It's like all of this trillions of scrolling and information and pop psychology and the next Instagram fad, right? It's like you're sitting on that train and you're digesting everything that's flipping past you out the window because it's externally referencing. But what I've noticed as I've matured, as I've had children, as parts of my life have changed for so many reasons, I'm noticing that when I'm internally referencing, and so I'm present with my breath, I'm present with the location of my shoulders and my spine, I'm present with the sensations of my feet. And so as I'm cooking, as I'm walking to the car, as I'm going to do the shopping, as I'm dropping my kids off at school, there's this eternity of spaciousness. And people will often say to me, God, you must be so busy writing a book, running a business, you've got 2 children. And I'm like, I'm actually really available, I'm really spacious. And sometimes I think culturally, what do I even do with that? Because as Gretchen said, the currency is busyness, booking in to do more things. And it is a little bit of a paradigm shift of when we're really with ourselves, there's a satiation. And this is what you'll learn through Sense and Ground. As you begin to locate your 8 senses, which is discussed in detail in the book, and as you learn to tune in to your sense of orientation and where you are in a room, and even understanding, that's the east out there and that's where the sun's coming up, and the west where the sun sets, all of this orients us and helps us to feel centered and helps us to know where we are in the world. Because if I know where I am in the world, then what's flicking out past there in Instagram and social media or in the news and other people's lives is not destabilizing me. Because I'm actually located in the center of my own life. Time slows. availability opens up. And we are living from a different reference point, which is internal referencing, which is internal authority, which is agency to choose. Do I want to join that community? Does that feel nourishing to my bones? Or am I joining that community because I'm afraid of not belonging, because I want to look good, because I want to appear this, because I want to keep up with all of the external, right? These have radical implications on our physiology and our nervous system. If we are continuously chasing what's out there and trying, that's a key word. Anyone who's done one-on-one sessions with me will have heard me say, just noting, anytime you're trying to do anything, you're kind of fighting your own nature in a sense. Because when we drop into what we're feeling, an effortless flow directs us. And we're not trying, we're following. We're being pulled. It's like, no, I really want to talk to that person. I'm driven to talk to that person. It feels exciting. It feels vitality. There's aliveness. I want to go there is different to, well, I really should do that. I really should call them. I really should turn up. Right? So this agency is saying, where is my full body yes? And again, I talk about that in the book. How do we know what we're aligned for, what drives us, what lights us up? Or are we doing what we think we should do? Are we trying to impress others? Are we trying to get external approval, external validation? All of which I believe is really endlessly unsatisfying. But once we start the internal self-validation, self-witnessing, self-presence, self-connection, the physiology rests, because suddenly the physiology is not working hard. It's less stressful. And so, Gretchen could probably talk at length on this is massive for our physiology, and it's actually really interesting. But go ahead, Gretchen, I'd love to hear.
I was just gonna say, let's make this like super spontaneous and just so I'll just speak from like what I'm experiencing, right now as I'm hearing all of these like 39 minutes into our meeting. So to me, I love thinking about the nervous system because it just
Yeah.
explains so many things, not just physiologically, like what you're feeling right now, but also like your thoughts and your feelings, right? Because they're all interconnected. I think that is one
Yes.
of the message that I always relay to people because they might think, oh, I'm just anxious. But then there's physical ripples on that. And sometimes it's the physical that's causing the anxiety feeling or emotions. And so they're all interconnected. And rather than, of course, we want to explore and see what's going on, but there's a sense of relief and hope when we realize that it could be all of them, and it could be multiple things. So there's openness. But going back to the spontaneous, just to show how it's all connected, I've been in many situations where, as a psychiatrist going to a new space with strangers who don't know me or my story or maybe my work, or maybe who may not even know what a psychiatrist mean,
Mm.
or maybe who may hold high regard for mental health professionals or super low regard for mental health professionals because we all have different brains and different stories and different experiences. So I recognize that this is a space that I'm walking into. And so I feel in my body, a sense of nervousness because one, it's a new anything new, your brain will shoot out all of these new signals to tell you that, hey, this is a new place. These are all the things that you have to kind of keep in mind. And now I can be obsessive about it and be like, what are the questions they're going to ask me and all of that stuff. And I will drive my reaction in a certain way. I have this adrenaline already because of the nervousness, but I can also choose to be open and say, I'm actually very excited about this because one, I love supporting Joey's work and it's been a while since we talked to each other in a shared space. And so it's a and then I can talk to myself, that way. But in the middle of all of that, there's so much to think about. What always grounds me is like, I take my breath. So when I'm getting excited, I start walking fast and I feel like hot in my body and everything. Then I realize that, okay, I'm starting to feel it in my chest. And then I remember that, you know what? I go back to my truth is what you're saying. Like, what do I really want? What is my values? What are my passions? What am I really excited about? And really, to me, I like to keep things very simple too. Yeah, remembering that we're in a shared human experience, and that is like there's just so many, there's millions of different stories and everything. I'm here just to be a participant and share. And if I say something helpful, great. But whatever it is, I'm talking from my heart.
Mm.
And there's a certain level of self-trust. I trust that I'm a good person and that I trust that I am here to help and share and learn from other people, and that I focus on humility as far as not knowing I own my own experience, but I don't know other people's experiences, and all experiences are different. And so that truth is so helpful, and to access that in moments that can cause maybe nervousness or anxiety is it's so I feel like it's a superpower. You
Yeah.
know, I've been in situations sometimes when someone might really like say very hurtful things about maybe mental health or psychiatrists, in general, or doctors in general. And then in an instant, all I need to do is, go to my breath and then think about like automatically, like a patient that I've touched or helped a long time ago just comes to mind. And then all of that noise just goes away. And I feel like I'm really buffered from that noise, and so it's
Yeah.
so powerful because it makes me feel like I'm really in charge of the energies that I bring into my space, and things that I need to like put out there. So yeah, it's just something to add to what you're already saying about being in tuned.
Yeah, so that was a really beautiful number of examples of the internal referencing, the breath, the noticing, okay, I'm feeling the rising physiology, and we can feed the stress and anxiety by all of the what ifs and the catastrophizing, and we can participate in that. Or we can recenter, we can orient, we can remind ourselves my voice is just as important as everybody else's. It's not more important, it's not less important, it's just a voice. It's one of what, 8 or 9 billion voices on the planet. And there's something very humbling about that, because when we do silence ourselves, and that was a big thing for me writing this book actually. It's like, well, why me? Like, why? It felt, it really, really epically challenged my ego. And I had to sit back and say, well, I can feel this book coming through me. It's coming very quickly and very powerfully. And I actually wrote this book in 2 weeks, but that was after a year and a half of two previous drafts. But once it wanted to come through as the sister book of Rocksteady, I wrote it really quickly and it really flew out of me. It wanted to be out in the world. But there was a lot of, but why would people listen to me, and why, I felt indulgent almost. But there's this happy medium where we have to honor our own voice. And all of you, you've got something valuable to say and offer the world. And actually, by withholding that and silencing yourself and deferring to others, the world misses out on your beautiful center, because you are completely unique, and what you're experiencing from your 8 senses, from your digestion of our world, nobody else can offer, only you. And so this internal referencing stabilizes us, because if we're focused on everybody else and what they think, it can be very destabilizing, decentering, literally. And when we go inwards and say, okay, well, how do I want to show up to this? What's meaningful to me? For many of my Rocksteady clients, it's as simple as feeling their feet, and just the sensations in their feet or wiggling their toes can be enough to bring them home into something that's familiar and anchoring. And we can all have our different tips and tricks. And actually, interestingly, what happened to me in writing this book was I had so many thousands of hours of internal referencing. Arguably, I was an internal referencer since childhood. I've been doing some work with someone on my ancestry and my origin story. And what surprised everyone, including me, was I didn't seem to develop the need to externally reference. So, as a young child, I saw my parents as flawed humans, and I saw that their choices didn't suit me or match me or suit me. So, I went my own way from a very young age, which is less common. So, I was internally referencing as a child. So, anyway, fast forward to writing this book, and I felt like my sensing ground process was actually saying to me, get into other people's worlds and understand them, right? Because if we're only internally referenced, and if we're saying all that, oh, I'm just going to avoid that person, they're not like me, or I feel uncomfortable, I'm just going to put a wall up, put a boundary up, it feeds a sense of separation and divisiveness. And when we're unwell and destabilized and recovering, that's important sometimes to say those people are really not nourishing for me, so I need boundaries and safety. But once we're strong and centered and we have capacity, I really feel that where we're heading as a collective is breaking down the divisiveness and breaking down the separation and meeting each other in our humanity, which means you could be from a completely different racial background, worldview background, just completely different to me, but I can stay present and say, tell me more. I want to know about you because I'm not threatened by the fact you're different to me. In fact, I love you even more despite your differences because we're like two different cells in the human body. You might be an eyeball cell and I might be a liver cell, but we can still meet each other and honor those differences. And um, those skills become available to us once we widen our window of tolerance, once we learn to stay more present with our body and our difficult, intense, dark, hard stuff, once we reconcile our own distinction and differences, right? Because in my opinion, we're all fed this illusion that we're more homogenous and that we're more similar, right? And if you think about your teenage years, you try and wear the same shoes as your friends or dress the same as your friends, and there's this seeking sameness when actually we're all beautifully unique and different. And I think that's part of our adulthood and our maturation is saying, I am totally different to everyone, and how beautiful is that? There is a bit of grief involved that we have to grieve the letting go of the sameness, because I think all of my rock steady clients would understand this feeling that like no one understands me, no one can see what I'm feeling, it's so invisible. And that can lead to these suicidal existential low points where things can feel so impossibly difficult. But what if we're supposed to be different? What if it is a scientific reality that I can simply never understand Gretchen fully? Like her complexity and humanity is so immense and vast that I can only ever know snippets and touches of her. And what if those little snippets and touches are gifts that we open ourselves up to rather than feeling as though we need to merge and understand everything fully? So what I'm getting at is through the sensing ground and internal referencing, I love the analogy of cells in the human body. We have our boundaries, that there is a boundary where I end and where Gretchen begins. And that distinction between us is a beautiful thing for us to lean into and respect. We don't need to merge into each other and become the Joey Gretchen illusion of sameness, that we can actually sustain our boundaries and love each other and respect each other within those differences. That is a whole skill set that, my personal opinion, is radically needed on our planet. And I think it all starts with this self-referencing anchor. I'm going to throw it over to you, Gretchen, see what arises for you in this, bringing it
Yeah.
into the collective, really.
Yes. Oh gosh, like there's so much I'm thinking about. You're reminding me of actually an idea that other mental health providers I'm learning from, like just in terms of term, that some people think of um, mental health actually as this idea of interpersonal neurobiology, um, and it has to do with Yeah, we're all relational beings, and the just you hearing my voice sends all of these signals that causes physiological changes in your nervous system, and that can give rise to memories, emotions, and all of those things. So it is really, we are all connected in all kinds of ways, and how that connection means could be different for all of us because we all have different
Yeah.
experiences, growing up. Now, we've been talking a lot about like being aware of our body and everything. And I'm just going to read the question that I sent you on the chat actually. And so now seeing so many people, in my clinic, we talk a lot about self-awareness and coming back home and self-acceptance and then doing your stuff, out in the world and living the life that you want, all those things. But there are situations when and sometimes there is a medical issue, or a physical issue that needs to be addressed. And I think my privilege as a psychiatrist compared to other specialties in medicine is this idea that, again, everything is connected and that I'm always now have trained myself to think of everything as there's a biological piece, there's a psychological piece, and there's the piece of our interactions with all the experiences in our lives, like your life story and
Yeah.
your environment. And so I guess a question for Joey would be in for me in my approach in comprehend teaching or helping people to have this comprehensive lens in looking at their health.
Mm.
The importance of body awareness, we talked about that. And in situations where medical evaluation might be important, like what's your advice in encouraging people to, yes, stay connected to the body signal while also recognizing when it might be helpful to bring in medical care or other support?
Yeah.
Or how can we, if we see that in other people, how would you approach that?
Well, first of all, in Australia anyway, but I would say globally.
Mm,
For the clients I see, the medical investigation is their first port of contact. So they have their extreme experience, whether it's a vestibular migraine cluster, some kind of unusual vertigo or tinnitus. They will quite quickly and intuitively want medical clearance. It's extremely rare to have someone go through that kind of life altering experience and not consult a doctor. So generally, I don't have to say it. But what I do have to say is make sure you find a medical practitioner who you trust, because otherwise they can say things like, look, we can't find anything, we've done all we can, and you don't believe them. And then you end up in this physiological anxiety loop, which is all understandable because you're not actually trusting what the medical expert has told you. Like they must have missed something. There's got to be something here. And so then you're off to the second doctor, and then you're off to the third doctor, and then you're off to the fourth doctor. And I've had clients who have spent $80,000 on medical consults and investigations, and they kind of stay in that pattern of dissatisfaction. And so what I usually offer is do your best to find a medical doctor who you can rest well with. You don't have to love them, they don't have to be your best buddy, but just someone who you will actually trust what they say. Because if a doctor says, we've done your bloods, we've assessed what we can, we've looked at your MRI, and we feel quite confident there's nothing medically that we can act upon, and I'm sorry that I can't explain what you're feeling or sensing, but I can't medically offer you any linear or practical solutions. And in my case for clients, the best outcomes, it sounds ridiculous, but is often like a vestibular schwannoma or an acoustic neuroma where the medical doctors say, we found a little benign tumor and there are surgical options where we can go in and remove that. And clients are obviously beside themselves because that's a great outcome. So they feel really validated, they feel attended to, and they feel there's some kind of practical solution. But for many, it's a journey of, well, actually maybe there's neurodivergences and maybe the body is responding to the world in ways that we need to look at. How am I in relationship to my body? Am I sleeping well? Am I eating well? Do I have enough nourishing relationships? Because I think social deprivation and an absence of meaningful, intimate relationships is a very, very important glue for our well-being and our health. So yeah, my encouragement is always believe the doctors, and after we can have that medical clearance piece comfortably attended to, see what you can do about your relationship to your body, because at the end of the day, you have to go to bed with yourself and you wake up with yourself, and you're the one that you're eating breakfast with, and you're the one that you're eating lunch with, and you're the one that you're doing everything with. So what's that relationship looking like? Did I answer your question in a way that felt satisfying?
Oh, yes. And it actually it's making me think about how again, there are a variety of experiences because as a psychiatrist, I see also the opposite where the focus is on the psychological stress. I'm feeling down or I'm feeling burnt out or I'm feeling irritable or angry, all the time. And we in clarifying the sources, many times I become the triage part, because we identify that there is there is something that needs to be addressed, that wasn't addressed medically. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's why really this idea that everything is connected and in investigating and a lot of times it's the basics first, like what you said. It's I think of mental health in in of course the biology, psychology, and interactions with your environment. But when it comes to addressing what's happening, it's in my head, it's three layers. It's what do you do in the moment when you're feeling the sensations and then you're having to respond and choosing how you want to respond, in the moment kinds of things. And then there's in that self-awareness, there's the deeper exploration, of what is this from? Is it from a past experience or is it from a big decision that's awaiting that I'm trying to avoid? Or is it from too much social media? And
Yeah.
then the third part is really the foundation, ways to take care of our health in general, like supporting the physical stuff, like your sleep and nutrition, the movement, enough rest that many people don't get, like not just sleep but rest throughout the day, and then the connection part, like even though it's not physical, like
Yeah.
you said, interpersonal relationship has physical impact,
It's
has
massive.
physiological impact in our nervous system.
Yeah.
And to keep it even more simple, it's either we're in stress, not in, and we know that stress doesn't have to be bad. Stress is just a signal, yeah. But is it like feeling bad or feeling good? Are we turning on the threat response or the calm response?
Well, even spoke to a beautiful person. Then we might wrap it up soon. I want to read from my book, and but I want to share this story. I spoke with a beautiful, hearty, belly laughing woman recently, and she's older than me, but she was reminding me of a time in her life when she said I felt this small. And she said, I was around the age of 40 and I was in an abusive relationship and I had been crushed. And so this is that sense of self and that sacred identity of who am I in the world. And if the people you are living with or surrounded by are crushing you down, and this is very relevant for anyone who identifies as a minority, if your voice is being belittled, dismissed, minimized, if you're not being listened to, if you're making those bids for connection, right? Something I've been looking at recently. We do this as children. We call to our parents as a baby because we want eye contact. We want to be touched. We want to be sung to. We want breast milk. These bids for connection, that's our physiology seeking the environment around us to recognize us, to say, hey, you exist. I like you. You belong here. Tell me more. And if we're in environments where we're starting to be squashed down into this tiny little identity where we feel worthless and our self-esteem is struggling and we feel sick and bedridden and just life is a series of doctor's appointments, it is quite a serious medical matter that we find people who help us feel our natural, expansive, glorious, beautiful nature. Because we want you to be surrounded by people who uplift you, people who recognize you, people who pick up the phone when you call, people who send you photos of beautiful trees for no reason, just because they want to share the tree with you. Like for people who go out of their way to be nuanced with you, so that your deeper humanity is bolstered instead of squashed and dismissed and diminished into this tiny, worthless speck of scum on the earth, right? I was actually thinking the other day, this is kind of not funny, but I'm laughing because it's ridiculous, possibly true. It feels to me that in the last 2 years, I've been through this huge worldview shift because I view interconnectedness, I feel interconnectedness, I'm in touch with my physiology, and oneness for me is a phenomenon that I experience. It's not a theory. And so I've just learned in the last couple of years that some people live in a paradigm of separation and categorize others and don't try and know others. And that to me, that is just mind-blowingly, earth-shatteringly unbelievable, because I want to know everyone. I haven't met a person on this planet who I don't want to know. I want to know you all because we're all connected and you're all my brothers and sisters, and that's how I'm wired, right? But anyway, the funny bit is I'm like, part of me feels like our modern day culture is kind of an abusive relationship, because modern day culture in some ways is consistently giving me this message: you're not enough. Learn more, buy more, do more, get more qualifications. Who are you? Get off that podium. Like there's a lot of rejection information coming from the mainstream world. It's like, get in line. How dare you speak your mind? And blah, 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 blah. But I just thought it's kind of interesting to look at things this way, because we are in relationship with the culture we're living in. And the moral of the story is make intentional choices about the people who you surround yourself by, because it radically shapes your nervous system. About to host a 6-week Sacred I Am group where we're looking at our sacred ego, which is the truest story of who you really are in your diversity and your nature. And what are those stories people have been putting on you saying who you should be? And just simply looking at that, because it's a beautiful inquiry. And we want you to go from feeling like this to feeling back into your natural shape, where you can breathe easy and move easy without the cage of what's expected of you. We're all on that journey. I agree with Gretchen. I'm learning every day, and I'm in tears crying to my friends and being like, oh my God, I'm making sense of this, No one's got it all together. No one has it all together. No one is neat and tidy and packaged and sorted. No one. And we're all doing our best to maintain our sanity in a world where there's an awful lot of distraction, clutter, confusion, imbalanced use of power, and abusive hierarchies, and systemic abuse, institutional abuse. That's all real and happening. Our physiology is surviving within that. And I hope that Sensing Ground gives people the toolkit to make it more gentle, more nourishing, and more centering. Thank you so much for your time today, Gretchen.
Thank you for having me and giving the space to share some of my thoughts. And thank you for writing your book.
Yeah, well, it kind of was drawn out of me. Shall I just read a little bit from the book to finish up today? Does that feel like...
That would be great.
Okay. So this is just from the introduction section, and it says where we go from here. And I thought I'd just give you a little taste. So, the wisdom you seek is found within you, and this book will continuously remind you of that fact. Sensing Ground isn't another theory to read about. It's a practice that you embody. In the pages ahead, we'll delve into the 7 main areas of exploration and mastery. We start by exploring how our bodies take in stories from the outer world. You need to keep the stories that feel nourishing and empty the stories that feel tense or rigid. Your body will show you which stories are yours to keep and how to empty the ones that don't belong to you. At this point, you're learning to cultivate the skill of loving attention and direct it inward. Next, you'll learn the art of locating your conscious attention and harnessing it. Attention is like a flashlight that directs life force. From here, you'll learn to enter the mystery of all life, to sit in the unknown and to explore liminal spaces. Modern day life is addicted to certainty and external answers. I'll invite you to stop chasing and start resting inside your whole body, honoring the wisdom that lives inside you. One certainty we can rely upon is that life has highs and lows. Intensity is part of being alive and nothing to be afraid of. So you're going to learn to open and widen your window of tolerance, to stay present with your bodily sensations, even during high arousal. This will build your bandwidth. Your body compass expresses its own yes and no as it contracts and expands throughout the day. You'll learn to listen to your body and follow its guidance, to rest in your own rhythm and live life on your own terms. I'm just taking snippets and snippets. So the next one is, aloneness can be such a gift when you understand how to cultivate your own inner haven. You have a sacred sanctuary located inside your body where you can rest, recharge, and rejuvenate. This is your internal temple or battery station where you connect with yourself, develop safety for yourself, and belong to yourself. Doing so meets your core needs for connection, safety, and belonging. From here, you meet the outer world with clarity and confidence because you're no longer searching for external elixirs. I might leave it there, but that's a little taste of what's to come for those of you who are waiting. I'm so excited for those of you who it's already arrived. Feel free to take a photo of yourself anywhere with this book and share it on social media to help the world see what you're reading, what you're exploring. I'm thoroughly looking forward to our discussions on the sacred I am. I want nothing more than more humans on our planet to feel a sacred sense of interconnectedness, because that to me is a healthy ego. A healthy ego says I'm one person of 9 billion and I matter. My voice matters, and those 9 billion other people benefit when I use my voice, my agency. So I'm not doing it for me, I'm doing it for us. This is this sacred interconnectedness that I think we're all cultivating collectively as we observe the divisiveness, separation, the war, the conflict, the political instability. It's not working. The separation paradigm that says you're this and I'm that, the labels, the diagnosis, the cults, we're all equal. We're one human species, and my dream for the world is that we learn to walk together, to honor our differences, to be proud of our distinctions, to communicate without masks, to embrace our vulnerability, and to show up with as much loving attention as we can toward ourselves, toward others, and toward our beautiful planet. So that's my wish, my prayer, my blessing. Thank you to everyone who could be here today. I'm really looking forward to the Sacred I Am, and if you want to jump on board, if you haven't already, get in touch. We'll send you the details. Gretchen, wishing you a beautiful day. Thank you for the work you do.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for being a part of this conversation, and may this book spread its wings and land in the hearts and the laps of everybody who'll benefit from reading it. So thank you, everyone. So bye for now. Have a beautiful day.